Hello, ladies. Oh, and already I hit the wrong button. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning RPG Show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined today by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming, and two very special guests. We have Mr. Michael Curtis and Mr. Chris Doyle here with us to talk about Denizens, which is a new Kickstarter from Goodman Games that I am personally very, very excited for. So right off the get-go, hello. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Great. This energy.
Do you guys prefer Judge, Michael, and Judge?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want like the honorifics, or are you just hanging with the boys today and it's just Michael and Chris?
Mike and Chris is good.
Mike and Chris, perfect.
Super excited. So right off the get-go, though, I wanted to ask you guys that you're both employees of Goodman Games, obviously. And so we'll start with you, Chris. What do you do at Goodman Games so people know what's going on?
All right, so I am the director of 5e development and design. So the way we kind of look at it here is that we have two sides of the house, and basically we have the 5e side of the house and the DCC RPG side of the house. One of those sides is smaller than the other side. One's got a lot more bedrooms than the other side. But I manage everything on the 5e side. And yes, both of us have been with Goodman Games full time now for a couple of years. So and it's an absolute dream come true.
That's fantastic. And Michael, what are you are on the other side of that coin, from my understanding.
Right. I mean, I live on the other side of the house, basically. It's just, so basically everything. Chris and I do the exact same thing, but with different staff. That's basically, the process is the same, but the mechanics are somewhat different. That's what it comes down to. And we share a foyer. Every now and then we come in there. We'll have stuff that we work on together in the middle of the house, and then we go back. So right now we've been spending a lot of time, in that shared hall with, because Dungeon Denizens is one of those shared projects where there's elements to it from both sides of the house, pretty much.
Yeah, and so talking about Dungeon Denizens, this is a massive monster book for both 5e and Dungeon Crawl Classics. Did it start as just one? Like, were you gonna let's make a monster book for one of these systems, and then why not both, kind of a thing? Or how did it originate?
Yeah, that's a great question. It did actually start as a 5e book only. As a matter of fact, when we were kind of conceptualizing this, trying to figure out the marketing side of it, we were like, what are some of the things that are going to make this monster book different than, quite frankly, everybody else's monster book that's come out the last 5 years in the role-playing space. And we really kind of homed in on that. Well, let's do 500 monsters for 5e because that sounds great. Yeah. I mean, it's like that's a nice little catch thing. And then we took it even bit further. We're like, what sounds even better than 500? It's like, well, what about 555? Because if people are crazy enough to do 500, why not do 55 more? So that's kind of where we landed on it. And then as we were moving along in the process, we kind of warmed up to the fact that, hey, while we're doing all this work and having, quite frankly, all this art done, we should really have a DCC version of this book as well. And so that was kind of the evolution of it. So trust us, if this project would have kicked off years ago as more of a DCC/5e, we would have, Mike and I have talked about this, we would have done this a lot differently. It would have looked a lot differently on the logistical side of it and everything. But no, so it did start as 5e, and then it kind of turned into DCC after that.
I love the house analogy you guys started with in the beginning, because now I want to ask my mom if we can have a sleepover and play Dungeons and Dragons all weekend long. So be ready for that invite. But one thing that I know, you guys are a publisher that has been creating content for a very long time. Kickstarter's been the big thing that's come out with people, doing these Kickstarters before they actually put the book, do the work on the book and see kind of to gauge, is this something people want? And if they do, then we're going to do it. When did you guys start seeing that Kickstarter was the way to go to really get your kind of projects launched? Because before, I assume you did the product, you put all your hearts and hard work into it, and then you put it out on your shelf and you hope people picked it up and bought it. So talk a little bit about that change that we seem to be in recently with Kickstarter blowing everything up really, and creator-wise.
Well, I mean, for Goodman, we kind of got into it like tentatively some years back. I think I wrote a venture called the Chain Coffin, which turned out to be this big box set. But originally it had this kind of spinning puzzle wheel on it, and Joe was just like, we should try to kickstart this because this is kind of weird. We should see if people are interested in this sort of thing. So that was kind of a way to judge the market. I think we had done a Kickstarter before then to like fund, because we give out swag for the road crew. We give out like notebooks and pencils and badges and all the rest of that stuff. I think we had done a Kickstarter there, and I think we originally had a wizard van as like the top level, but that didn't fund. So like the Chain Coffin Kickstarter was the one that was really like, let's use it to get a handle on what the market is like and what people desire. So that was, it was a modest success, and it was one of those things that Joe was like, we need more stretch goals. Like, we didn't know what we were doing, so we didn't have like stretch goals all planned out, beforehand. It was everything Goodman Games does is just like, we just do it, and then we figure out how we do it. We were talking about how we got into Twitch streaming and online conventions. Like when COVID happened, we were just literally like, well, I guess we're going to do an online convention. Let's figure out how to do that, and literally like in a month threw one together. But we've been kind of doing Kickstarters of increasingly more difficulty since the Chain Coffin, and I think it's not just us, but Kickstarter originally became, was originally like, for you to take your dream and, you to get that bar going that you've always had a dream, or get that book published. And, but now it's basically become pre-order. And that's a godsend, but there are people out there who hate that. Like, that's not what Kickstarter is for. And sorry, man, that might not have been Kickstarter's for, but that's what Kickstarter.
Yeah,
but you guys see it as a positive, right? It's been a positive influence on. That's great.
Definitely, and it gives us a chance to do some off the wall projects, like when we did DCC number 100 with all the spinning wheel maps and everything, and then doing a book like this with over 500 monsters. It's a pretty, the production on this book alone with all the monsters and all the art is quite a challenge and quite expensive, and getting it out there on Kickstarter and kind of gauging what the interest for that is very, very important for some of our larger projects. And we still have a very aggressive release schedule that never hits Kickstarter, but so we do kind of save like the really big ones for that, so that we can kind of because I don't know, that's in my opinion, that's what Kickstarter is all about. It's like, getting somebody to spend $100 on a slipcase collection of books is tricky, but Kickstarter is like the perfect place for that. It's the perfect kind of entry for that. So I think that's where we prefer to kind of make our instrides with Kickstarter.
Yeah, and I noticed you guys have been doing other crowdsourcing as well, and obviously I guess Kickstarter is the biggest and the most name recognition and things like that. But I thought I was following you because I think it was like they're dabbling in all these different ones, like BackerKit and things like that. Is there? Was that this is kind of off topic now, but like, was that an experiment, or is that kind of you want to shift away from Kickstarter or include other things like?
Yeah, it's a combination of a bunch of things. It's dipping our toes into other platforms. They all have advantages and disadvantages. And Kickstarter has some disadvantages as well. So it's really more about keeping our options open and trying to see what the best fit is. But you're right, Kickstarter is that well-known, well-established brand where folks are going to find you on Kickstarter. And you start talking about GameFound, and GameFound is about a year old now. BackerKit, I think, is about a year old, maybe not even a year old, doing their thing. So at some point, you could definitely see us moving into those directions, probably heavier. But I think, at this point, we're just trying to gauge the interest and seeing where the crowd is. Well, one thing I've discovered is the RPG community. They tend to be an educated group, and they can figure things out. They'll find you, they'll find your website, they'll find your show, they'll find they'll figure it out. Sometimes they'll find stuff you didn't think that was still out there on the internet.
They read the DM guide, so yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like so that's good. So if we do end up transitioning to a different platform, we're pretty confident that the folks will find us. There might be a little bit of a lag, but.
So with Dungeon Denizens, we have 500 monsters for 2 of these different systems. I'm familiar with DCC stat blocks, and I'm familiar with 5e stat blocks. They're 5e and then DCC. What are some of the challenges of like syncing these monsters up? I guess, like, do they translate well between the 2 systems?
Do you want to go in?
Well, I mean, I think so we started with a 5e baseline, and I mean, since when Chris is producing a project for Dungeons and Dragons, which has almost a 50-year kind of accumulation of lore and history to it and everything, where DCC is very much just like, whatever works, make it up, it does, there's we're very much open to that. So we had to do some paring down of things. There's certain races that appear in like canonical 5e, which in DCC don't exist, or something completely different. So some of the flavor tests had to be edited. We've had to make some changes, and we different referrals to stuff. But the main thing that we did when we were converting stuff over to 5e was that I told the conversion team, don't feel obligated to do this on like a one-to-one conversion basis. I think it's more important that you get the tone of the character rather than like completely reproduce this breath weapon. So it is for DCC now. It's more like if the dragon the dragon breathes fire. Well, maybe he breathes molten daggers. I mean, like it was more of the feel free to kind of go along. And that was actually a little challenging, because some people were just like, they wanted to do like a really good job, and they wanted to be faithful to the core stuff. And luckily, I had done 2 ore books at this point, so I was somewhat familiar about kind of taking something that somebody else had written and kind of like playing around with it, still being true to the source material, but making it more accessible or for that audience that you were dealing with. So I was able to provide some background and some suggestions on that. So I think it took a little bit of challenge, as Chris was saying. It was one of those things where we learned a lot. One of those things we learned is don't take 3.5, convert it to 5e, and then convert the 5e stuff to DCC. It probably would have been really. We all started with a 3.5 and just took it from there. But as you said, that wasn't originally on the plan. But we do Dungeons and Denizens too. We have a scheme in mind.
And a monster book is super popular. Like, I think my favorite book, if you were to ask, like what's your favorite book from 80s or 90s, Fiend Folio was the one that grabbed me. You grab it, you bring it off. And there was lots of monster manual books and all the other books, but Fiend Folio was the one that just the artwork, the cover, it grabbed you and never let you go. It was stat blocks with stuff that's in there, but it also had some of the most interesting, I think, writing about what this creature is and what it is. And we know Goodman Games is not shy about the thickness of their books, and obviously saying 500 monsters is what you're going to do. You guys aren't shy on that. You don't skimp on page count at all. How much in this book is about the picture of the creature, the stat block itself, and then the blurb about how does this exist in a world, or how do you fit it into your world, or where does it exist in a given world type thing? How deep do you go into some of those? Maybe it varies in all of it, but just as a general question.
Yeah, that's a great question. The first part, really the only thing that the 2 books will be similar on is the artwork. The artwork is going to be the same for Monster A, is going to be in the DCC book. It's going to be the same artwork as the 5e book. Outside of that, they're going to be different. Like Mike said, the lore text was changed because some of the things don't exist in the DCC world, or vice versa, or the D&D world. So we had to actually, we had to kind of massage those lore texts and kind of and change up. And then of course the stat boxes are very different. I mean, you're going to notice some similarities, but for the most part, they're going to play very different. And in our opinion, most of the monsters are going to have a very different feel between the 2 rule systems. So I think that's kind of important. And yeah, I mean, we don't shy against really big projects. We looked at it with our conversion team and our original designers. We wanted cool monsters. We wanted evocative, interesting designs. That's why we reached out to so many different contributors for this project, because we wanted them to be cool. And then when our editors got the monsters, we were like, hey, if you think you see something to make it even cooler, let's talk about that. Let's have a back and forth. And we did that. And then back and forth between us, the developers, and the editorial team and the conversion team, we would say, hey, this isn't really working, or this might not work, or throw this over to playtesting, and let's make sure this actually works at the game table, and then come back and tweak some things. And we did that a lot during this project to really kind of land on monsters that are going to be good. I mean, are all 500 going to be amazing and you're going to want to use it at your table? No. I mean, you mentioned the Fiend Folio. The Fiend Folio had some great evocative designs in there, but there's also some really head scratchers in there too, which makes the book beloved. But at the same time, there's some really weird stuff in there. So hopefully we've achieved that goal with this book, and we think we did. So.
Well, and like even those weird monsters, that's just a way to be inspired, and you're like, oh my gosh, like you know, that if one person can build an entire campaign around a crab holding knives or something, then I think you won. Like you did your job. But I was even just thinking, like, there are like, how do you like magic, because DCC magic is so different from 5e magic, and a lot of monsters have spells and stuff. Did you kind of just turn a lot of into abilities? Is that kind of the way you would do that, or?
Well, I mean, the great thing about DCC is that, you know, we literally have an entire section in the rulebook that says, you know, monsters don't play by the rules.
Yeah.
So, you know, so we didn't have to worry about figuring out like what the spell check modifier is going to be for a certain spell or anything like that. We can literally just be like, yeah, it does this. Like this, like you have to make the saving throw, or you know, if you don't want that to happen to you. You know, it was, you know, but there are some, you know, some of the designers were like, okay, let's give them, you know, let's give them magic powers, you know, and so there's I mean, the advantage of dealing with DCC as opposed to with a 5e, where 5e is, you know, it's you know, it does what it does very well. But you know, it is designed to provide kind of a shared experience over a very vast market. You know, so you could literally, theoretically, you could take, you know, you know, that's why it has the Adventurers League. You know, I can make up my first level, you know, 5e character, and then I can go anywhere in the country, and you know, I'll play that campaign, and it's going to be the same rules, and everything's going to work out. Where DCC, I mean, I kid Brendan LaSalle, who was kind of in charge of our road crew, which is, you know, like our, you know, our traveling, you know, people running gigs in public. I call it our disorganized play society, because you know, everybody's just basically, you know, they're just like, this is my house rule, and this is what we do, and Joe Goodman has come out. It's like, yeah, we don't explain everything in the DCC rulebook. Like there are purposely areas where just like we don't tell you how to do that, because you'll figure that out yourself, or you'll figure, you know, so when you're doing monsters, it's just a lot of the same thing. You know, some people are going to love that grittiness, you know, so the monster might have, you know, he has a +10 spell check modifier. Other ones are just like, yeah, it's just whatever, you know, whatever he feels like doing. That's his thing. You know, you can set your head on fire with a glance, and you know, make a saving throw if you don't want that to happen. You know?
So I feel
monster
like
books have been. Oh, go ahead,
I feel like I'm hearing your job is easier than Chris's then. So. But go ahead, Lucian. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I would say the 5e side is a little bit more structured and rules intensive, and you know, we do encourage our designers to try and, you know, push that envelope as far as they can, but it still needs to kind of be 5e at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, I have to admit there is a little bit of jealousy there in well, we can just do whatever we want and not have to worry about spell slots and calculating DCs and stuff like that. There's something very refreshing from a creative standpoint to be able to do that, and that part is amazing. But at the same time too, there's some people in the world kind of like me who love our rules and love to hate, you know, getting them right and wrong. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge on one side and a little bit more of a creative process on the other side.
Monster books are a really popular kind of Kickstarter in a way for lots of companies to get in on kind of the 5e craze, and not even just this explosion of our community just growing and growing and growing with it going mainstream and more modern, and you know, nobody's afraid to say they play Dungeons and Dragons, I think, anymore. Nobody's talking about hiding in basements anymore. It's like none of that comes up anymore. It's like everybody gets to play it, and you know, it's explained. What I've noticed is most of those books that everybody's playing, a lot of times there's like this creep of our creatures are a little bit tougher and a little bit stronger, so they always put at the beginning of the book, hey, just so you know, these are a little bit stronger, a little bit tougher than you're going to be used to if you're using, you know, the Wizards of the Coast monster book. So just be ready when you have that in your campaign. How do you guys feel where your book it kind of lies? Have you kind of just bump that difficulty up a little bit on them monsters, so it is considered like these are kind of hard, they're a little bit at the high end of whatever your CR rating is or whatever, or do you feel like there's just a good range in there?
So what we did, so about a year ago, almost exactly, Wizards of the Coast came out with Monsters of the Multiverse, and they kind of reset where monster stats were, and they kind of dove back into that CR system. We've always kind of viewed the CR system as like the pirate guidelines. You know, they're just guidelines, the pirate code. It's not real. Like a CR5 is, you know, maybe it's a CR5, maybe it's a 6, maybe it's a 4. But so they kind of rejiggered everything a year ago, and they did kind of dive in and make a lot of adjustments to some of the stats. If you look at them again, if you look at them kind of on the surface, it doesn't look like they changed much, but there are some pretty significant changes in there. So what we did was, since we were kind of viewing this as a core book, you know, for the 5e player and the DCC player, we wanted on the 5e side to actually go back and make sure that our format kind of matched that up-to-date Wizards of the Coast format. Of course, we already had 500 plus monsters designed in the old format, so we actually went back in and tweaked all of them. I actually went back in and tweaked all of them. We thought about sending it back out to some of the editors or whatever, but it got to the end of the day. I was like, you know what? It's my job now. Let me just do it. And I took a couple of months and I went in, and it was actually a great exercise to do, because it got me an opportunity to actually touch every single monster stat box again. And actually kind of look at them and think about them after not seeing them for a couple of months. So I think there was an opportunity for me to even go in and tweak up some things a little bit more, and maybe add a little bit more evocative things, and just kind of rethink the designs a little bit. So we feel they're similar to what WotC's put out as far as what the CR goes, and it's certainly in that most recent format. So if you're not familiar with the format that that they came out with, you know, you might take a little bit to get used to. But to be honest with you, that new format, in my opinion, it's easier to work with at the game table, and it's a little bit better. There's like a lot of the other tweaks you practically don't even notice. Like, I would say Game Master would notice the differences, but the players, they wouldn't even know that the monsters were changed with. A lot of people were up in arms. Apparently the D&D community can really get up in arms over some things.
It's weird. Yeah. It seems odd.
When something comes out, you find out it's really not that bad. You know, it's really not that bad. So.
We had a really interesting question in chat. Zach was asking, when making a bestiary book, how much retcon is needed looking at other publishers' bestiaries so you don't make something too accidentally similar? Or, I guess, I don't know, kind of an interesting thing. You don't want to duplicate monsters, so to speak, but there's only so many ideas out there, I guess. So is there a lot of oh, this is too much to a Monty Cook 5e monster, we should probably take it out, or something like that?
You could duplicate a monster if you do it better.
Well, there you go. Okay.
I like the attitude. I love the attitude.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that was definitely a fear going in, but we kind of got over it quickly in the fact that we have seen similar monsters appear in other books before. And, you know, again, the odds are that they're going to be an exact duplicate or not there. But I mean, I know there's a couple of things that are in our book that have actually since been released, like official WotC stats and things like that. But like Mike said, I kind of think like, well, mine is you know, maybe it's not better, but it's the one that we designed, and it's the one that we're comfortable with. So but yeah, you can really go down a rabbit hole. It's impossible to kind of, you know, track down everything. I mean, if you think about people just putting monster stats on their blogs and stuff like that,
yeah,
I mean, you
Patreons and stuff, people do it all the time.
Yeah, but you know, stuff only for their Patreons and stuff, like we can't do that. So I mean, we just put out, like I said, monsters that we like and we want to play with. I mean, really, ultimately, that's what comes down to it. Everybody tells me, like, how did you decide which monsters are going in the book and which ones weren't? It's like, to be honest with you, it's the ones I want to play with at the table, you know? It's like, yeah, there's some in there that I'm like, okay, yeah, we needed a few more Fae, or we needed a few more Celestials or something like that. But ultimately, you know, we just wanted to get the monsters that we want to play at our table and that we think bring something to the table. And some of them are probably going to be similar to other designs of folks that are out there. You know, sorry.
Well, and
and add on to that,
I think the community understands that too, because like everyone's going to have a goblin or even like a bear, you know, and not I shouldn't say everyone is going to, but that's an animal in nature is a bear, and people are going to have bears, or people are going to have like weird squirrel monsters or mutated this, and so it's just kind of
oh my god,
I should say that.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned weird squirrels.
Well, now I want to hear the story, so go ahead.
So, what do you want to hear about the squirrel? Because we got one.
Absolutely.
So we have an infernal squirrel called an Infernal. and it has beady red eyes that will fix its gaze on you and actually like stun you or incapacitate you. It can detect magic, and then it's really good at swiping things and stealing things.
Yes.
And to top it all off, it's got extra dimensional cheek pouches that it can store stuff. So it can take lots of good stuff from you. So it stuns your party, relieves you of all your magic rings and all your other good stuff, shoves them in those cheek pouches, and then runs away. So
can I have this as a ranger pet? That's all I want to know right now.
you can do whatever you want in your game. We're not going to say no. It's just taking it from the DCC side. Oh, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And that's just an example of something like that where we feel that monster works really, really well in 5e and really, really works well in DCC as well. It's just it kind of touches both bases there. And it's just, yes, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, pun intended, but it's an example of just taking something in the real world. I kind of have an ecology background, so it's like I often look at the real world and how creatures function in that, and it's like, oh, that'd be kind of cool as a monster. So, and then just put the spin on it and make it, and then stat it up.
To add on from that chat question, I was looking through my Elemental Evil, and there's 40 pages in the back of this one that has new monsters. So Goodman's obviously been making new monsters, putting them in their different products. I'm assuming, and that's what we're saying, everything from your webpage, that these are all new Goodman game monsters. These aren't just other monsters that were taken from other Goodman Games books and then put into this, or are there some appearing in this book too? Like you could get some of the ones that were here and now they'll show up in this Kickstarter.
Yes, it's a combination. Since we've been around for 20 plus years, we've actually created quite a few monsters. So, and we like to refer to them as heavily play-tested monsters because they've been around and we've all run them and everything. So we did call some of the better ones from those, but well over half of the monsters in this book are new, are brand new. And then we've got 20 that are being created by the backers after the campaign ends. We hired a whole bunch of freelance contributors and had them create all brand new designs. So, I mean, you'll see the inspirations. Some of the inspirations are directly from some of the old monsters in first edition and even before first edition that, just didn't make their way to fifth edition, or just that, that role hasn't been filled or hasn't been filled this particular way. I think folks will be very comfortable looking at this book and be like, oh, I remember something like that back from the first edition days that, never made it all the way to fifth edition. But we do pride ourselves on our 20 plus years of history and the fact that no other company can tap into those monsters. But we can. So we were very selective. We went through and we didn't just grab all of them, because if we did just grab all of them, I don't think we would have had any new designs at all for this, for the 20 plus years of books that we've put out. So yeah.
Great.
I think when you're approaching a project like this, it's, as Chris was saying, it's a concern, but it's not really a concern because people have been statting up monsters for almost 50 years now. And they have been doing this professionally, and they have been doing this for their home campaigns. And once kind of the internet came out and people were sharing things, like alt.dnd, even back then, there has been, there've been everything has been monsterized at some point or another. So it's more at this point interesting variations on common themes. I mean, because everybody making this is human, so we all have our own limitations of what our imagination can do, unless you're HR Giger, and then but we're not. So for the most part,
we're not as good.
We're gonna come up with stuff. It's just how to do stuff interesting with that kind of idea. Like if you're gonna do a turtle monster, make sure it's an interesting turtle monster. So yeah.
That's great.
Do you have I have so many questions, but we'll start with this one.
A million.
So one at a time. Maybe I don't know, but there hasn't been an actual Dungeon Crawl Classics monster manual or a monster book before. And obviously a heavy focus on the modules and the adventures, and those always have really fun monsters in them. Why is that? Is that just kind of you were really focused on those, and then is this because one of the reasons I'm very excited for this book, because I'm running lots of different little DCC campaigns on my own without the modules, and it would be fun to have a book of monsters to pull from. So
here's what I'm going to say. So the treatise about DCC has always been there is no a dragon. there is always the dragon. The idea is that their monsters should be unique, and because one of the things that DCC is very much is about kind of bringing that. For those of us who've been in the hobby, as I say, gamers of a certain age, the do is long off the roads. I mean, it's just like, like how many times are you playing something, like D&D or, RuneQuest or something like that, something that has been an established canon. You're like, you open the door and you see a big hairy, half, bear, half owl thing. And you're like, well, obviously it's an owl bear. I know what it does. I don't want to get hugged by it and everything like this. Where DCC is just like, the monsters are weird or they don't act as you're expected because the idea is just like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Should we be messing with this at all? Or can we talk to it? Or is it just going to eat it? So the idea has always been with the rulebook is like, here's an example of monsters. And we have like everything from androids to demons, the idea was just like, don't feel compelled about doing like a vanilla fantasy setting. You can do anything with this. So we've always been kind of about like make up your own monsters, and then we have like there's a whole bunch of tables of how to make the monsters that we do give you unique. Like you might have a goblin which is bone white and it blows up if you kill it. That's just a DCC goblin. So what I'm going to say is that this is a book that we adapted from the existing stuff like that. So we put a DCC spin on it anyway, but what we're also going to be including in that book, we're going to be including more tables. I would suggest that, as cool as the monsters in Dungeon Denizens are, when you get that book and you're looking through it, just don't use it as a stock catalog. Don't be like, okay, we're going to use 1d6 of these and everything like this. We're going to use 1d6 of these, and then we're going to roll on this table over here, or we're going to take this idea over here, or we're going to make this tweak to them. So even if your buddy is playing in the game and they've read through that, like, aha, these are infernals. I know, right. I think what these guys do. They're going to knock us out and take our stuff. And well, maybe these ones don't. Maybe these ones, burrow through your chest to get your stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's just because that's just the DCC way. Just take an idea and make it cooler. So that's why we've been avoiding the DCC, like any sort of a DCC monster manual for 10 years now.
Yeah.
This is one of those ideas. It's just, is there a market for it? We'll see what happens. And apparently people want one. There's parts of me which I'm glad about that. There's those parts of me just like, you can make this stuff up on your own. That's what we're doing for 10 years. So it's a challenging sometime. Obviously what Chris was saying, if the next one we're going to do differently. So
there is the next one. That's a spoiler then, yeah.
Well, it all depends on how the Kickstarter goes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have 300,000 reasons to think about maybe having the next one. So, and I think there's a great parallel there to exactly what Mike said with the original Dungeons and Dragons when TSR originally was not printing modules, adventures, because that same thought process is like, well, why would somebody buy a dungeon that's already created? Like, a big part of the game is actually creating the dungeon. That's a huge part of the game. And really, they were not the first one to the marketplace with adventures, because other companies were like, well, we think people would actually spend money and actually buy this. And then sure enough, TSR was like, oh, geez, I guess we got to do this. And it's like, and sure enough, their early ones were all converted tournament adventures from Gen Con and Origins. So until they kind of got into their groove and said, wow, yeah, there is a market, and selling adventures is always kind of like a necessary evil. It's not going to make you a ton of money, but you do need to have them there to support your game, because quite frankly, especially the modern gamer, I think, just wants to grab and go. And I mean, especially when you have kids and full-time job, kids, maybe you're going to school on the side too. Like, you just don't have, back in college and back in high school, we had entire summers to develop dungeons and create things and everything. Most of our target audience now, they're not in that boat, and they want something that they can grab and go. And they, literally for years, they've been saying, if there was a DCC monster book, we would buy it. And they've spoken loud and clear with the Kickstarter. So basically, and again, when we first started talking about this project, it was a 5e book only, because we were like, nope, there's not going to be a DCC version of this. We're not doing it. And then when word got out and people were like, no, we want DCC, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna give the fans what they want. I mean, ultimately that's what we do, is give the fans what they want, or give them the opportunity. So that's why we kind of came full circle with that.
And this campaign really is all inclusive, because I'm seeing here you're not only getting GM screens at certain levels, you're getting cardstock pawns to use if you're playing in person. You have T-shirt and dice that you could at certain levels get to. You're doing virtual tabletop information so that people are playing on the Roll20s and the Foundries and all those things. They can bring that in and get their game set up and prepped and go. The one I saw that I hadn't seen in a lot of other, or any at this point, the dust jackets with fantastic art. And if you look at the art on the covers of these, they're fantastic. Regular covers, limited edition covers, PDFs are coming in with this, and which I'm sure are all searchable and easily to use when you have your device at the table that you're trying to run your game. And then there was another one in here. I need you to talk to me a little bit about the faux reptilian cover. How did this come about? Whose idea was this? And how can I send them my money? Because it's a brilliant idea. I love it.
Do you want to go, Mike? Or?
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think that was my idea.
No, Mike, nice.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Mike,
if I recall, it
killing it.
Totally your idea. So.
Killing it.
I think it was just one of those things like, can't we do like I think what it came out is like I suggested we do something that felt like an in-world product, like an in-game, like something you might find, maybe thinking originally of a tome, and then that led to discussion of like, what if it was done in like some weird monster hide? And then of course that went down to let's see what weird monster hides are out there, and because it's the 21st century, and if you look for something, somebody's making it. So
Yeah.
we actually had a sample. We had a sample of various types of monster hide. We got together as a company a couple of weeks ago, and we actually got to see some of the stuff firsthand. And so that was the spawn for that.
Picturing all these game designers like, this has a good monster texture. I like this one.
Yeah.
And the design, the colors you picked were in the pictures, if this is what they're going to look like when they come out. And I know you have to work with your producers to make sure it all kind of matches and it comes close to these pictures. Maybe this is the picture of the actual book. The red and the greens they pop right out. It's a nice jet black, and it's like this, almost like this big black either snake or a black dragon scale or something of it, and it just looks I bet the feel of it is even just through the roof. So it just looks super cool. You guys have added everything into this Kickstarter, and then you get all these pledges. How fun was it kind of figuring out all the steps for a Kickstarter? Because I feel like the fun is the game and getting it to your clients, but also the fun is coming up with gonzo Kickstarter steps to see if we hit 1 million, we're going to do a wizard van, or if we hit 2 million, we're going to the moon and we're going to host a game on the moon or something, just something crazy.
Well, I mean that's the idea, but especially in the early days, But I think any company who's been around long enough, has seen how many Kickstarters, hoist themselves on their own petard because they were going to come up oh yeah, we're going to have that wizard van, or we're going to have this and everything. And then they hit that goal and they realize that they have to fulfill that.
They have to do it.
And they realize they're dealing with stuff which is outside of their control, which is something we at Goodman, we very, very rarely don't we include anything we can't have like a direct chain on, we do our own, we have a contract with Impact Miniatures who does all our funky dice and everything, so and so that's a long-standing thing, and we know what they can produce and everything, so adding dice is like a no-brainer, but if you were going to give, we don't get into stuff like STLs for your home printed miniatures, or additional, because that's something which is completely not us. And if something goes wrong with XYZ miniatures down the line, then the fans are saying, hey, where are my miniatures? And we're just like, so that's we like shooting for the moon, but we also are aware that there's escape velocity.
Yeah, we
physics is real.
We definitely spend a lot more time and effort before a project launches now than we ever did, to make sure we have all those ducks in a row and to make sure that we have everything, pretty much, ready to go. And we do always want to give more and more and more. If you look at our stretch goals and everything, it's all about giving more, making the book bigger, making the book better. And sometimes stretch goals are like, it's like we hit this amount, we're gonna thank you in a 10-second video and we'll post it, and it's like, it's great and everything, but we'd rather just give you more monsters and give you more stuff that you can use at the game table. But we do tend to now think these things months in advance. And again, we've been working on this book for almost exactly 3 years now, is when we first started it. before both Mike and I actually joined Goodman Games full time, we were actually working on this. And it's taken that long for us to get to this point because, again, we're just a small company. At the end of the day, we have only a certain number of artists and, one layout guy and everything. And everybody thinks these 500-page books just appear overnight. And no, they don't, especially when you're doing 2 of them. And then you start talking, reptile skin, faux reptile skin and everything, and all these different other parts that add on to it. So it's really become something that it's fun, it's exciting, it's nerve-wracking when it's, launch day and everything. But it is also, and it can also be consuming during the campaign as well too, because you're keeping an eye on it. There's always questions you need to answer. There's all those different things. So.
Jordan, I know it's your turn to answer a question. We are at $299, $976 on the Kickstarter right this moment. Somebody in our chat could go and make this 300,000. Hit that mark. Hit a stretch goal right now. If you don't do it, I'm doing it the minute this show's over because I'm going to make sure that 300,000 gets hit. Because we're right there. If you go to the page, we're at 299,976, or they are, not we are. They are, and it would be awesome to see them to go through that. Okay, I'll shut up, George.
Oh, no, you're fine. 300K is the brine elemental, so that's exciting.
Yes.
But it made me wonder, do you guys have a favorite monster in the book so far? I mean, you must, as you've been going through it for so many years.
Why don't you go first, Mike?
I mean, it's one of those things like picking your favorite kid,
which is easy. Everyone has a favorite kid, so
yeah. Well, there's stuff that predated me, which I always found it fun and everything. But there are some things which I was very happy to put in there. I think so. One of my favorites is one of the that I came up with and this was just where was this? There's the living stew pot. Which was just an idea of so if you in the very DCC frame of mind, you never know what you should be scared of.
Yeah.
And so it's like if you have like a bunch of goblins like in their cave and they're brewing up in a big stew pot, you're like, we'll kick those goblins' butt until the stew pot like gets around and starts chasing you on its little stubby legs, and it turns out its ladle is a tongue. And wants to wrap you up and like drag you into its boiling mass. So that's kind of where my I always say if you're writing an adventure, an orc guarding a chest is boring, but a chest guarding an orc is incredibly interesting. So that's kind of where the inspiration for that idea came from.
That's awesome.
Whatever one's off the top of the back. That there's actually one that I snuck in there from like a very very old D&D campaign, and Joe Goodman loves it because he's got this fascination for things. But it's the scorpipede, which is literally poisonous at both ends. So it's half scorpion, half centipede. So it's got the scorpion tail, and the centipede bite. So no matter which way you're coming from, you're going to get poisoned. So.
What about you, Chris? Do you have a favorite monster?
Yeah, obviously, my fiendish squirrel is one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
Inspired by encountering squirrels in the wild before, up in Canada. But another one that I've really latched onto, and this one I did not create. So we do have a section of the book where we've got some gnomish clockwork constructs. And there's several of them in there. And they were in an old adventure that we had done way back in the day. And as our editors were going through, one of the editors was like, hey, it's like I came up with an idea for a clockwork construct. It's like, can I add it in? I'm like, yeah, sure, go for it. It's essentially a clockwork gelatinous cube. So it's basically a 10-foot by 10-foot Roomba that moves around. And if you remember, the gelatinous cube, the gig about the gelatinous cube is you can't see it and you blunder into it. Well, this you can see. It's a metal cage array thing and everything. But the best part about it is when you get near it, it actually has grabbers. It pulls you inside of it, and then it grinds you up in your gears. And I play tested it a couple of weeks with somebody who had an overly cocky lizard folk fighter with a lot of hit points, and the lizard folk got pulled into it and was almost made into a suitcase until the barbarian had to actually help pull him out of it as he was getting ground up in all the gears and everything. So I've just gravitated. That's an example of when we went into this project, we didn't have that on our radar, and one of the editorial team was editing the constructs and said, hey, I've got some great ideas on some additional ones. And he said, can I do it? And I love the concept. And I said, yeah, I would love to play with that monster. So yes, please do that. And we added it to the book. So
yeah,
you guys made it. I am your backer, 3,544, nice. And you are now at $3,050. You have made the $300,000 stretch mark. I have helped make that next monster Let's keep going though. Let's don't stop. We got 10 days as far as I understand it. So that seems like that's a Tuesday. Is it all day Tuesday it's still going to be going, or is it like Wednesday it cuts off, or is it the Tuesday?
We'll be having a countdown show on Tuesday on Twitch.
Yeah.
On the
perfect
channel. You'll be able to watch it close out with us live, and we hope it doesn't go too late because Chris and I both have to go to bed and then go to GaryCon the following day. So yeah,
Yes.
I'm hoping it wraps up relatively early Eastern time because I want to get a nap because my flight is at like 6 a.m.
I did get the faux snakeskin one too, so I did get that book. So Mike, if I ever meet you in real life, I'll have it with me and I want you to sign it for me because the book was the brilliant idea.
I didn't know to sign stuff I didn't write, so I have no problem.
Jay, that's great.
How many artists are working on this? Like, I noticed that a lot of the art looks like one person did it, but it seems kind of daunting for one person. Do you have a team of artists, or?
Yeah, all of the artists are working on this.
Yeah, we have a team. I can tell you exactly how many artists are working on it because we did a show last week on what we called it the analytics of Dungeon Denizens, where we actually put charts and graphs together on a bunch of really silly stats. So we actually have 15 artists working on this project. 3 doing the different covers. We have Errol Otis did the one cover, San Julian doing the DCC cover, and David Griffith doing the 5e cover. And then we have 12 additional artists doing full color artwork for both the interior of the book and also for all the tokens for the pawns and the VTT and everything. So yeah, it's a lot of people wrangling groups of people like that, and quite frankly, the art is really what's taking most of the time because like Mike said, all of our artists that do our other art for our other things they've got other projects as well. They're doing other covers and they're doing interiors of books and everything. So basically whenever they have a downtime, it's like they bang out a couple of monsters here and there. And I'll tell you, best part of my job when I open up an email and it's like review these 10 pieces of finished art for the book and make sure they're good. It's so much fun to see them for the first time. Nobody else except for the artist and the art director has seen them, and I get to see them and be like, perfect, nailed it, and it's gorgeous. And each one seems to be better than the last. So
That's super fun.
This is all color too.
Yeah,
This is not black and white. So that takes longer than than an ink sketch or something. So so there's that additional time frame on it. So which is one of the reasons why we have such a big art crew working on it. Because if this was literally one person, we'd probably be launching the Kickstarter 3 years from now, just in time to get to the point where we could fulfill it. So.
And also important to know, all physical art too. This is none of this, no AI of course, but also no computer generated art on it. These are all physical medium pieces of full color art that if you go to conventions and once this art is done, and you run into your favorite artist, you might have a chance to purchase your favorite artist if they happen to have it, if they're willing to part with it, of course.
That 2-headed Enton carrying a beer keg or something. I need that on my wall. I love it. That's so fun.
How about this? Another really interesting thing in this campaign is the backer designer monsters. So at certain backer levels, 2 backers could design a monster slot. 750. There was 4 backers and so on. We're up to 3,000. So there must be 18 backers out there that are eligible to. Are you picking those as those steps are happening, or is that a list that's being generated and they're going to be done at the end of the campaign, or how's that whole piece come together? And tell us a little bit about the backer design monster part of this.
So after the campaign ends, we're going to be sending all of the backers basically the rules and the instructions on what they need to do to actually send us a backer design monster. We anticipate we will get hundreds and hundreds of these. Like I said, we have over 3,500 backers right now. Even if only 10% of them send us a monster, that's 350 monsters. So we only have room for 20 in the book. So we are going to split them up, and we are going to, as the respective design teams will review them, and it's probably going to be interesting, to say the least, how we end up on those final 20. But regardless of what rule system that we pick those 20 in, we might pick 18 of them being DCC and 2 of them 5e. Then we'll turn those over to the respective teams, and they will convert them over to the other rules. So folks are going to get, both rules books are going to have the same number of monsters in them and the same monsters. But yeah, it's a daunting process a little bit, but it's a great way to engage in the community and get people to really get a chance. And we'll be honest, we're always looking for new folks that can do design work for us. So if we happen to find a couple of folks that want to do this on the side and do a really good job at it, we'll certainly have a conversation with them. So
that's fantastic.
Scouting out. That's awesome. Are there any adventures with the Dungeon Denizens? I was wondering about that. Like, you get a really big monster book. Are you going to include any adventures that kind of feature the monsters, or maybe stuff that you guys were playtesting? Like,
Well, yes, one of the things is one of the add-ons which is going to be available for it is it's called the two-page delves. So basically, what that's going to be is we're probably roughly maybe 32. The idea is that it's going to be maybe 16 to 20 two-page encounters, adventures, depending on how much material the designer can squeeze into that. So this is going to be a product which can be used no matter which version of the book that you get. So we're going to be including, it's going to feature monsters that are either from Dungeon Denizens or something where you can generally assume that there's, like there's stat blocks for, like an orc. So it's the idea is that you'll be able to use it regardless of what you're going to be. Now, we've seen some of them have done basically short dungeons, maybe 5 or 6 room dungeons, because if you don't have stat blocks in there, you can fit a lot more content in there. Where others have come in basically big, like more like centerpiece encounters type stuff.
mm-hmm.
So there will be a way to kind of see the monsters in their quote unquote natural habitat, like the dungeon or whatever it's going to be. But Chris and I have discussed some ways of like how exactly do you make what we're calling a multi-system or system neutral or a product on this, and basically it's not going to be that hard. So, if it all works as what we think. So because you'll have the stat blocks for your system, and then all that is just figure about how do you handle skill checks.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And just talking about awesome timing with the fact that we just passed over 300K and we got the Brine Elemental. I wrote one of these 2-page delves and I feature the Brine Elemental in that delve. So there's that elemental, and then there's actually 3 other monsters from Dungeon Denizens that are all in there. And again, it's basically it's a little location, and then there's a couple of rooms and everything. So it's definitely like a one-shot kind of one evening kind of thing. There's like, I think I have some like 5 encounter areas or something, a little bit of role playing, a puzzle, a couple of fights, and then a little bit of backstory and everything, and then you're off to go. And then each one of these will have its own little quarter page illustration, half-page map, and then page and a half of content in it, and just be perfect to pick up and go. And yes, it's gonna be a great opportunity for playtesting some of these. We've already been doing that. The folks over at 20 Sides Every Story, Alex and his gang, they actually last night they ran a DCC version of one of the 2-page delves that Alex actually wrote, and last week they did a live playthrough of a 5e version of a different one that Alex wrote. So folks want to head on over there, they can kind of see what they're going to get for these 2-page delves.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you were saying system neutral just in the sense like no monster stat blocks, but
yeah,
you would have to say, like the thing is locked, and then the respective player handles that locked door with whatever system they're playing in, I assume.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
We're probably what Chris and I we'll probably grade like skill checks or something like that, like this is an easy test, or this is a medium test, or
Gotcha.
this is, and then at the front of the book we'll have, if you're playing 5e, a medium test might be a DC 15, where if you're doing with DCC it might be DCC 10 or 11, because we don't have like the bonded accuracy thing or anything like that. So it's just that way, it's just if the judge can just either photocopy that or just kind of flip to the front of the book or just pencil it in, so those are really the only the challenging the part of it. It's just slightly scaling those tests, but other than that, it should be. Yeah.
Really
as we wind down, we're getting closer and closer to the end of the show. I thought, what about the future of Goodman games here? Like, we see adventures, we're seeing monster books, we're seeing it for DCC, and is there any like kind of, you guys don't have to spoil anything that you don't. Have you guys thought about books that are more centered towards players would buy them because they have player options in them, versus everything right now seems to be very DM centric for the types of books that people might buy, except for the people that love art and things like that? Or other systems? Are we staunchly Dungeons and Dragons and OSR, DCC kind of stuff? Has there ever been any talks about some of the other systems out there that have shown up? Or is there a Goodman Games system on the horizon? You guys gonna make your own rule set game?
I think that
you don't
is
have to spoil anything.
classics,
But,
but
It's called classic. We've been talking about it for an hour
perfect.
now. Everybody else who's coming with their own in-house, they're Johnny-come-latelys. We did this. I mean, Joe Goodman is very good about like the thing is with Goodman is we don't chase an audience. And in fact, we just had a big discussion about this with kind of our get-togethers. Like, we all are weird enough at Goodman, and we know what we like, and we figure that there's enough weirdos out there that if we just keep doing which we like doing, the audience will find us. And that so far has worked for Joe for Goodman for more than 20 years now. I mean, how many other game companies out there that they got started during the original Owen game license in 2001 are still out there, are still active? So many of them died during the 3.0 glut, and Joe obviously knows what he's doing. So if anything, Goodman Games is adaptable, which is one of those reasons why we try to do Backers Kit or Game Found, or we try different, we're doing all this stuff. And as I said, when we were talking about online conventions, we just do it, and we figure out how to do it, and we fall on our face sometimes, but we get back up and we learn that lesson. So all I can say for Goodman Games, at least from my point of view, is that we will continue to evolve. There will things that will come out, and you'll be going, what? And then and then you'll be like, okay, nobody's done this before, but let's see what this is going to be. So
that's exciting.
I would say, however, I wouldn't expect much on the way of the player-facing thing, at least for DCC. You're not going to see splat books. You're not going to see the complete guide to warriors or anything like that. That has always been the great nut that everybody has been trying to crack in the game industry, because you can, there's the DM is always going to buy the adventure, and he's always going to buy, but the players isn't. So that's why we've been trying to, the role-playing game industry has been trying to figure out a way how to get players to buy more stuff. And frankly, if you can get a player to buy a rule book, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I would say everything's available on the table. I would agree with Mike. We're probably not going to get into player-forward splat books or anything like that. Obviously, adventures, we've done hundreds of adventures. We're always going to do those. But, hey, we've never done, a big monster book like this. We did a couple back in the 3rd and the 4th edition, but that was literally just like reprinting old monsters. It wasn't really doing a whole lot of new ones. So we are willing to try some different things. We're always looking to evolve and adapt. And quite frankly, do some of those homage projects like the original Adventures Reincarnated. That line is coming. We've already announced number 8, and we haven't announced 9 and 10, but we're already working on 9 and 10. So those are going to continue, and people are going to love those when we do finally announce those. Hopefully later this year. So. We have a lot going on. There's never a lack of projects to work on. It's just a matter of, wow, this is a cool one. Now I got to get working on this one too. So
Crypt of the Devil Lich just finished, and DCC 100. I think those are shipping soon. So and I'm very excited for Dying Earth as well. I'm a big Dying Earth fan, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun when it arrives.
And we're always looking at other licenses too. So we're always keeping those, especially from some of the the Appendix N crowd there. We're always looking into those. So we have a lot on our plate, and it's amazing. So we're just going to keep having fun in the sandbox.
I think I speak for Chris. Like, the hardest part about our jobs is like, can I work on that, or do I have to farm that out to somebody else? This is,
I want to do it all.
There's so much cool stuff, but there's just not enough hours in the day. So
I wanted to do. You mentioned Temple of a Mental Evil earlier. I wanted to do that one all by myself. I was still working full time. I wasn't with Goodman when I did that one. It was impossible. We had to have a team approach to it. It just would not have worked. And same with this monster book. We had to go the team approach, and and that's quite frankly that's what Michael and I do most of our time, is we're just guiding our teams. We try to work in a little bit of design work here and there when we can, fill the gaps in and work on some of the fun projects. But for the most part, we're just making sure everybody's moving toward that goal, and making sure that the next Kickstarter is going to get delivered, and this line of books is going to keep going, and then we're going to work on this OAR line book and everything. So it's exciting.
That's so cool. I will say, I love that you said the fans do find Goodman Games. You said earlier, and it reminds me, I'm currently running like Peril of the Purple Planet with some friends, but I'm doing that with Dungeon Crawl Classics because we were trying to figure out what next game do we want to play, and a lot of them were 5e people, and I was like, well, I'm willing to run some of these others, and I had ran one friend through a funnel like 6 months earlier, and she was like, I think she basically convinced everybody else that we need to play Dungeon Crawl Classics because she was so like into it and stuff, and so she brought this group to my house, and we've been, playing ever since. And it's like they do. You find the people who love it, and then they'll be with you for a long time, I think. So
The Goodman Games, we are blessed with a wonderful community that we could never have assembled on our, like, we had set out to build this community, it would have failed horribly, and it just gelled together of all these weirdos and people who have all these shared interests, and we just all found each other. Like, the tribe just assembled. It was like, and they are some of the most creative, the most passionate people that I've ever had a pleasure. I mean, gamers get a lot of flack, some of them rightfully so, but I think the Goodman Games, the DCC community has just been, I mean, I love all of them. We're going to Gary Con in a couple of weeks, and that's like a family reunion. I mean, we everybody gets together, they bring stuff from their home state, stuff to drink, stuff to eat. We all get together on Saturday night, and you found your people. So
and your guys' booths at all the conventions are kind of like a mecca. I know when me and Jordan are at Gen Con for the last couple of years that we went, every day as we go through the hall, we stop at Goodman Games, even though we were there the day before, or even though we might have been there 2 hours before that, and we were like, well, let's go back around. We might see something else, because you guys put out such a great presence to meet with everybody that's coming to the conventions. You're running games. People can sign up for the games. You have so many things you can do. And then it's just the merch and we were talking earlier too, the t-shirts were so good. When Michael was on for pre-show, he was talking about which t-shirt he was going to pick on. I was like, it blew my mind thinking I could have a closet full of all the Goodman Games t-shirts. Would be so crazy. That's just so good. You've got Gary Con coming up. Obviously, Gen Con's probably on the list again now that we're past kind of the COVID lockdowns and we're back to getting out and meeting with our friends and our community and stuff. I heard that you have an even bigger kind of con schedule, your Road Warriors, your groups that go on. So Gary Con, Gen Con, what other kind of stuff are people going to be able to see you guys at?
We do Origins every year. We're going back. We're actually going to do the UK Game Fair for the first time in a couple of years. So we'll be over there, hanging out with the fans in the UK and anybody who hops over across the channel and everything. We're looking forward to that. I mean, there's a lot of these smaller cons aside from like the big events and everything in your old local neighborhoods. We have, I think, 4 people now who are kind of doing our booth stuff and going to local shows, and all the designers, we when we can, we try to make it out everywhere that's local or within a flight stuff. I mean, I don't know how much time Brendan LaSalle spends at home anymore. He's always off on his way to, it always seems to be Mepicon or he's like, I joke with him, that's like 8 times a year or something, because he always seems to be coming or going to that. So all the information, the complete updated convention schedule is on the Goodman Games website. It's too long for me to be able to rattle off. So, but if you're interested, go take a look at there. And if you've spent the last hour listening to us talk about DCC and about all the rest of the stuff, we do offer online demos every Tuesday night, so you can sign up for that and play DCC for 2 hours. And also this year at Gen Con, we're going to be having the funnel experience, which means we're going to have about 5 tables, during the various slots, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, where you can come in and for 3 hours sit in and play a funnel, and your surviving character, we'll stamp it as survived, and then you can take that off to any DCC campaign and look, I have a first level character, I'm ready to level up. So so it's going to be a good year.
That's great. Do you, before we go, I want to ask, do you have a favorite con? Because I want to kind of try and get out there and see more cons. Like, if you had one con that you absolutely don't want to miss.
I would say Gary Con. I mean, it's in Lake Geneva. I mean, if you haven't done it, you got to do it just for the pilgrimage. So you got to walk around town and everything and see all the sights and everything. So I mean, I just think it's the birthplace, in my opinion, of tabletop role playing games. There's just something about it. The crowd is funny. I know it's getting bigger and bigger, and it used to be a much more of a more of a personal convention. It's a lot smaller, but it's great. I mean, Gen Con is Gen Con. I mean, Gen Con's just amazing as far as the scope and the size, but some people don't like the size and scope of Gen Con and the fact that you can't get a downtown hotel room and whatnot. So, but yeah, so I would say GaryCon's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with it. I mean, I've been going since GaryCon 4. That was my very first one. I haven't missed one since.
Wow.
And as I said, it's like it's a time for the Goodman Games crowd to get together. Like, because we were talking before that we do like going to a con. We do a lot of like building the community by doing this. And I think GaryCon, I think one of the early GaryCons was where DCC was first being kind of play tested. So I mean, I think DCC is about as old as GaryCon is. So it's well that no, it's a little bit younger because I think GaryCon is up 12 or 13 now. I forget. I think
so.
it
Yeah,
might be 13. But yeah, it's we've kind of grown along with it, and the fan base has grown with us. So yeah, so, I mean, come there, hang out with us. We have the booth presence, and as Chris says, it's a large con, but it's not a huge con. So it's not one of those things. It's like if you see somebody, you will never see them again through the rest of the weekend. It's, it's like hey, you want to get together and do something later, or we're gonna go grab pizza, in town, or come on. So yeah, definitely GaryCon. I'm not short. I'm not shorting any other con. I'm just saying that GaryCon does everything it does very well, and I hope Luke and everybody who's doing it has continued success, because I will keep going every year. They keep inviting me, and if they stop inviting me, I'll go anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chris and Mike. This was super awesome. For those of you listening either on podcast or watching this video not live, there will be links below to Dungeon Denizens. You should go check it out. It is fulfilled, and they're obviously working hard at it, and we will have and hopefully more stretch goals will get unlocked. It'll be super cool. Thank you again, gentlemen. Super
You're
excited
welcome.
to have you on.
Thanks.
This was a lot of
Thanks for having
fun.
us.
And we will see all of you next time on another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Take care.
Bye, everybody.